I hope I can convey some lessons to you, some things I've learnt, some things I've discovered about myself, but also tell you, share a bit, about what goes on behind the scenes with creators. Now, of course, I'm a very small, tiny creator, but if you have over 1,000 subs and you speak your mind and you're very opinionated, you're going to get detractors eventually. They're going to start accumulating. And when I was starting to like talk to Scott and get to know him, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I had no idea that he was going to have so many detractors and so many people against him. And it was the same thing with AD. I see the same thing going on with him now, with what AD experienced. But what I can tell you that even though it's not particularly nice to have detractors and for people to say things about you that are unkind or untrue, um, I've learned that you can make the most of your detractors because, in fact, your detractors and the people that don't like you probably will amount to about 40 to 45% of your audience. In fact, the more I tell my detractors to ignore me, don't watch me, don't listen to me, there's nothing for them here. If they don't like me, they find me boring, don't watch me. The more I say that, the more they watch. So I'm actually benefiting in some capacity from them watching me. And that's exactly what happened with AD when he was here, because his detractors would watch him over and over again. They would record him. A lot of his viewership and audience were his detractors. And I would say his detractors made up about that same percentage, probably between 40 to 50% of his audience. People were watching him constantly on a daily basis, recording him, clipping him, and then putting his sound bites on their channels. That was giving him a lot of viewership. His detractors he used to his advantage for a while, and I decided to do the same. There is a myth that the more views you get is the more money you make on YouTube. It's a myth. One of my detractors actually said that, the more views she gets, the more money she's going to make. That's not how it works. Now, you need views, yes, but it's actually watch time that earns you more money than views on YouTube. And I think it's because views are put on the bottom of the videos. People think it's views make you money. It just doesn't work like that. And I've said this before, if I had a shorts channel and I had 10 million views from my shorts on my shorts channel, that wouldn't make me much money. It's really your watch time. It's how long people are spending watching your video or watching your videos. So views count because you need views to get watch time, but it's actually your watch time that makes you money. And I haven't told you some of the things that have gone on behind the scenes in the last few months. I've kept that secret. After all that happened with that other creator, and when Bam passed, I was getting a lot of comments and messages. And basically how I deal with my detractors is I delete, block, and or ignore. Not necessarily in that order, but I tend to just ignore them, and that's basically how I deal with them. When Bam passed, I was getting a lot of comments, and some of them I print screened and I might share with you another time. Some people were saying that I had something to do with what happened to Bam. Ridiculous, I know. I've got no doubt who that rumor started or came from. I have no doubt who that rumor started with or came from at all. And it was like for about 11 days, I was getting constant comments and messages on my channel that I had something to do with what happened to Bam. And I just deleted, blocked, and ignored, not necessarily in that order. And after a while, that rumor dried out. It faded out. And I think it was partly because I think her son wrote a comment on his Facebook page saying she had passed because of so-and-so. Something completely unrelated to me. And of course, the rumor was so ridiculous. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. I hadn't really spoken or corresponded with Bam leading up to her departure, both literally and figuratively. I hadn't spoken to her. I'd never been to Nottingham. and I had, of course, I had nothing to do with what happened to her. Um, so it was just a rumor, and it died out. And perhaps if I had made more of it, if I had approved the comments that were being written on my channel during that time, and if I had engaged with these people, um, I think it would have become a bigger story. But because I just ignored, deleted, blocked, and kept silent about the comments that I was getting, the rumor faded out. And I think most people with any common sense would know that I had nothing to do with what happened to Bam. Now, some of the myths that I've heard about myself are actually quite amusing, and I just have a good laugh with it. One of the myths about me that I hear on a periodic basis is that the food that I share with you online on my channel, that I'm taking photographs from magazines and that I'm not really cooking the food. That's one of the myths. That is so ridiculous. And it's just so preposterous. I have an ego, and I've shared that with you. I don't deny what I am and who I am. I have an ego. I have narcissistic traits, and I think if you're going to be a creator and you're going to put yourself out there and be open about your opinions, you have to have some level of ego. But my ego does not extend to that level of superficiality. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. I have nothing to gain from taking pictures out of magazines and putting them on my channel. That doesn't make me any more money. And I hear ridiculous things about other people, and I hear ridiculous things about myself. And I try to have a bit of fun with it, but some of the stuff is really ridiculous. When I parted ways with Bam, and whether you want to say I left her channel or she blocked me or whatever, when I stopped going to Bam's channel to participate, um, actually before that, when I was friends with Bam, people on the other side, because I wasn't particularly friendly with the Ruseks around that time, with the Rusek supporters around that time, people on that side were saying, the only people that support me are Bam and her squad. And that's just ridiculous, because I already, when I became friendly with Bam, I already had my watch time, I already had my subs, I was already eligible. And I think I was already eligible for everything. I could have a membership button on my channel, and I've kept that off for now. But I will eventually get one. So I never went to Bam for anything. The reason why I gravitated towards Bam is because she was a loudmouth, and she was the loudest voice on the Claire Morgan stuff. And I was very intrigued about the whole Claire Morgan situation at that time. And while I enjoyed my time in the beginning, and I enjoyed the friendships that I made in the beginning, I never needed her. I never needed her subs, and I never needed to go to her for anything. I've had a good life. I never needed Bam for anything, and I have some wonderful subs who have supported me for a long time, through thick and thin, through dumb choices and mistakes that I've made, through seeing me fall flat on my face. I've made mistakes. I don't deny that. I've made mistakes on YouTube. One of the mistakes I made was getting involved with Bam. And some of my subs have stuck, with me through thick and thin, through all of that, all of the mistakes I've made, all of the silly choices that I've made. So one of the myths, after I had stopped becoming friendly with her, is that, I was going to fall flat on my face, and that I would have, I would kind of be on my own, which didn't happen at all, because the fact of the matter is I never needed her for anything at all. And, I sit here, and I'm not going to say that I won over Bam. I don't look at it that way. Having said that, her life ended up very, very sad. I think, some of these plays you call Greek tragedies, I think that her life was really pretty much like that. Um, there's nothing for me to envy about her, and there's nothing that I needed from her either. Um, no one knows how it's all going to end. However, I never needed her at all. And I think because of that myth that I kind of went to her for subs, or went to her because I needed something, that myth that's been put out there, has actually, not only was it not true, um, but I think some of the people that I did become friends with, and I don't want to put them all in one category, because actually, Bedtime Clown, who used to do live streams with Bam, has come to my channel a few times and written comments, and I'm sure he doesn't like me because of how outspoken and honest I am, and how blunt I am, and how frank I am. But he's always been, whenever he's been on my channel, he's been very respectful. But I think some of her other followers, I mean, the ones that like really followed her and looked up to her like she was a leader or some kind of messiah, um, I think they expected that I would be really kind of alone and fall flat on my face. I think that Bam makes out that, or she made out when she was here, that if you were no longer part of her channel, then you were nobody. And I think that's another myth. You know, the truth of the matter is that she was an unemployed middle-aged woman who sat on her high horse shouting into a microphone or a computer or whatever you want to call it, talking herself up and talking a load of rubbish, really. She was just full of false bravado. um, I never needed anything from her. I had a life before her, and I will have a life after. And I think some of her subs expected me to fall flat on my face and be kind of lost on YouTube. But the fact of the matter is, I don't need YouTube either. Um, my primary goal for being on YouTube and starting a channel was to share my opinions with you and to share my passions with you. Anything that I get out of that as a bonus, whether it be monetary gain, a relationship, a friendship, um, all of that is just extra. You're just grateful for. I'm grateful for any extra friendship. I'm grateful to have a laugh. Um, but my primary goal was never to have to verify myself or verify who I am. It was just to share my passions and my opinions, and I was never trying to be in any group in particular, or I was never trying to be. Um, I'm not trying to be on any side. I'm just the girl next door sharing my opinions with you, and it's kind of like a take it or leave it kind of thing with me. Now, I would like to be, in all honesty, more liberated from my ego and more liberated from my addictions. What are my addictions? I have many. So, I love social media, and I think social media does become an addiction. I'm pretty much on social media every day. I'm on my laptop every day. I go to my email, I answer my messages, and then I'm on YouTube, and then I'm here and there. And some of the things that I do on YouTube are completely unrelated to my channel. I spend a lot of time watching fridge organizations, eat in a day videos on pets, um, London apartments, decorating, and some of the things that I watch are pretty much unrelated to what I talk about on my YouTube channel. Although my channel is quite broad in the sense that I consider my channel a food and lifestyle channel as just as much as a TC channel. So, but I would like to be more liberated from my ego. I would like to be, I'm addicted to food. I'm addicted to social media. I'm addicted to love and the feeling. I'm a hopeless romantic like Jennifer Lopez. Difference between me and her, well, there's a lot of differences, but I'm more, I'm smarter than she is when it comes to that. I mean, what is she on her fifth marriage? Um, so, I have my addictions, and I have, there are things that I would like to be liberated from. And, I love YouTube, and, I love being on YouTube. Um, but at the end of the day, it's not the be all and end all of my life. And we're all going to have critics. Once you get to a certain subscriber count, you're going to have critics. If, people who have, people who are kind of like, put it this way, if you are outspoken and if you do things like what me and Scott do, and I mean, I wouldn't say that me and Scott are similar in any way in terms of our channels, but if you are outspoken and if you make an example out of people and you critique others, it's gonna come back on you. But some of the things that I hear are just so ridiculous, and I have fun with it and I laugh with it. But what I have learned is that it is best to just disengage, because your detractors, your critics, and the people that don't like you, what they really want is to know that they are getting to you. They really want your engagement. And I think I've got a different way of handling my detractors than Scott does. Um, and, he does it his way, I do it my way. I will sometimes throw my detractors a bone, sometimes, but it's very, very rare. The detractors, they want your attention. They want to engage with you. They want to know that they're getting under your skin, because that gets them supply. So that is why, for the most part, I just really just ignore, delete, block. Don't engage with them. Every now and again, I'll throw them a bone and I'll say something without mentioning their name. But I really, really think it's best, what I've learned, it is really best to disengage, because your detractors and your critics and people that don't like you, they want to know that they're getting to you. They want your attention. They want supply. They look for your attention, and they look for your engagement. They look for you to respond. When you don't respond, they just end up really talking to themselves. When I was growing up, my dad was a very difficult person to live with. And you don't know as much about my dad because I don't speak about him as much. I speak much more about my mother. But he was a very difficult person to live with. And I have quite a few of his personality traits. But what I would do in order to keep myself sane, I would just ignore him. I wouldn't engage with him. I would just basically just ignore him, because he would look for my engagement. He would look for supply. And although I was spoiled by my dad in a lot of ways, I got gifts, I got laptops, I got money. My dad was materialistically very, very generous. But he had a Jekyll and Hyde personality, which is why I tend to stay away from Jekyll and Hyde people. But he was also, even though he lavished me with gifts and I never wanted for anything, he was a very narcissistic individual and very difficult to live with. And he would like a response. If he said something that he thought was going to get under your skin, you'd want a response. And the way I dealt with it was just to disengage and ignore. And I think that's the advice that I would give. It's not always easy. Don't get me wrong. It's not always easy to disengage and ignore, but try to, because they'll end up having a conversation with themselves and among themselves without your input. What they really want is your attention. They really want your input. They really want to know that they're getting to you. So disengage as much as you possibly can. It's not always easy to do. It's not always easy for me to do. But it's best to disengage as much as you possibly can. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I will dip my toe in a little bit. But I really just try to just disengage.